Well, it's Friday already. Thank God it's Friday. Good morning and welcome to your perfect morning starter on Channels Television. It's the Morning Brief, and I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeffrey. As always, it's the weekend edition. Let's bring you up to speed with what's happening. Bukola, what are you tracking?
Oh, well, it's interesting to hear the governor of Oyo State, Makinde, after that visit with the president yesterday, come out to address the press. And he did say that there is no need for him to join the All Progressives Congress. Of course, his visit will trigger, permutations and, curiosity about what the intention would be, especially after, that press conference, or if you like, media parley that, stirred controversy when he made those revelations. So one would be curious about, the conversations that went on behind closed doors between the Oyo State governor and the president, and, what was said and what resolutions were reached. But he said, look, he's quite comfortable being with the People's Democratic Party. And, in the future, there may be cases where the nation would need bipartisan intervention beyond what the position of the ruling party would be. There would be a need for, difference in political interventions, shades of opinion, if you like, not quoting him copiously. So this shows, strength of character, unlike what we have seen in recent times in the country, where the political map has shown a dominance of the All Progressives Congress with a number of defections, a record number of defections in recent times. But what would even reinforce this strength of character demonstrated by one out of a very few governors in the country would be which party the Oyo State government, and indeed the people will be supporting in 2027. Would it still be the All Progressives Congress, as we saw in the last election when the governor aligned with the G5, and then we saw that things have now fallen apart and the center can no longer hold? Would it be a candidate of the People's Democratic Party? That's if the People's Democratic Party is able to surmount its challenges of litigation and eventually present a candidate. That would further reinforce the strength of character that has been demonstrated by the Oyo State governor. Then we would see, someone standing, in the strength and in the character that we saw of this current president when he was governor back then in 1999. Jeffrey.
Interesting days lie ahead. So we'll leave out of everything away from, we'll not talk about speculations. We'll just say what he said. Like you said, Bukola, we hope that what happened in 2023 is not going to happen again, because himself, he was part of the G5 that eventually worked against his home political party, the People's Democratic Party, in the 2023 presidential election that saw the emergence of President Bola Tinubu as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So for now, we just keep watching to see how things play out. The reason I don't want to be quick in making deeper comments is because perhaps these are very early days. Alignment, horse trading, and all of that, they are still early days in all of this. So let's see how it plays out for the permutation around what interests, or what are the interests that lie ahead for the Oyo State governor first. Because as you know, he's not seeking a second term. What he may be focused on now is his future political ambition. Does he want to run for president? I remember Kayode actually really asked him strict questions during that media parley. It wasn't straight with the answer. I don't want to say, maybe I will be saying he was borderline evasive, because he's a politician. When he finishes one level, he wants to grow to the other level. He says he's quite competent, given his history in the private sector and being a two-term governor. He's as qualified as anybody else who will run for president of the Federal Republic. So the cards are out there. They are still quite open. And then on the other hand is the issue of succession. I know that he has said during that media parley that Adelabu, the Minister of Power, doesn't have the capacity to be able to hold Oyo State for the president, if that's what the president is relying on. That the man doesn't have, according to him, the capacity to hold. So that speaks to the issue of succession. So all of this happens, you know, there has to be federal agreement, there has to be state level agreement, there even has to be maybe local government agreements, and that's how politicians horse trade and negotiate and work. So sometimes it's more than you see and know. When they say look left, please, when politicians tell you look
everywhere.
left, please look right. Don't look the left first. First of all, look right, then look up, look down, before you look the left. I'm telling you, because not everything is in white and black as far as the issue of Nigerian politics, and maybe politics in general, but interesting days lie ahead. So we're hopeful that with what we've seen so far, the elections will be as successful as possible, because right now we're dealing with some level of insecurity that is quite disturbing, talking about an abduction. But the president has now posted some of those ambassador designates to their, you know, either high commission and embassies. I think one to the United States, one to France, one to Turkey, I think one to the United Kingdom. I can't remember all the names, but we've been screaming. As a matter of fact, the presidency hasn't come to tell us exactly why it delayed in nominating or appointing ambassadors. We're seeing the backlash of what has played out, especially in the United States, with the United States state government, when you have a president like Donald Trump that for the next 4 years, okay, he's done 1 year, so we have 3 years to be on this sprint. With Donald Trump, it's not a relay, it's not a marathon, it's a sprint, because he's saying one thing now, he's blowing fire the next moment. So let's see what dates will change as soon as those ambassadors, you know, resume their places of postings. Bukola.
Yes, indeed, Jeffrey. Quite a lot to reflect on, you know, where that is concerned. You know, insecurity is a challenge that we must, you know, continue to, you know, look into that space and see what the government is doing and ask questions and, you know, demand more accountability. And speaking of which, the U.S. government has, you know, asked the Nigerian government to, you know, do more to protect Christians. And this came through in the federal capital yesterday during a high-level meeting where United States Working Group held in Abuja. The UN Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Alison Hooker, stressed that Nigeria must do more to ensure the safety of Christians and their right to freely practice their faith. And of course, this is a direct reaction to, you know, the abduction of 177 worshippers in Kurminwali community, Kajuru local government area, which took place on Sunday. And we saw, you know, from evidence coming through from members of the community, journalists from that area, and another who spoke to us yesterday, that indeed there was some cover-up by the authorities to prevent the information from getting out. And of course, we know the reason that, you know, this is taking place and the agenda behind all of this. We've seen in the year 2025, the redesignation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, the narrative in the United States and the position expressed by the U.S. president about Nigeria being, you know, a place unsafe for Christians. And so this is a direct reaction to what has, you know, recently happened in Kaduna. And of course, it causes us to also ask questions about, you know, the contract for lobbying awarded to a U.S. firm in which the the Nigerian government, you know, is seeking, you know, some sort of image making on efforts of Nigerian government to protect Christians in the country. And this contradicts with the position, you know, expressed by the Nigerian government in response to the narrative in the United States about whether or not Christians are being killed, that indeed what is happening back home is that it's both Christians and Muslims that are being killed. You know, a direct contradiction of the official position of the Nigerian government back home. And so there's more accountability, we can't say it enough, that is required about the exact nature of the intervention of the Nigerian government in the area of security, in the protection of Christians in northern Nigeria, and, you know, more effort in the north and in the northwest, and more recently in Nigeria's north central, seen in the deployment of security, boots on ground rather, in communities that are vulnerable, such that words are matching action, or if you like, action matching words. In the provision of security for Nigerians, because that's the simplest and the most important, fundamental commitment of the Nigerian government to its people, the provision of security of lives and property. Jeffrey.
Absolutely. So we'll continue, as I always say. Most of these things they continue to be developing stories, and they unpack and unveil as the day go by. But we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back to bring you up to speed with what the dailies are leading with. But before that, Yiaga Africa has done what they call the National Voting Intentions Survey, where they are looking at some elements ahead of the 2027 general elections. And one of the first questions I was asked, how many people are really interested in voting? That report is out. And we're going to have an expansive conversation with a panel today, both CSO and the politicians, to look at that report and try to, interrogate it even further to see how we're preparing for the 2027 general elections. But for now, let's bring you what the dailies are saying in just a moment. Stay with us. All right, let's get started with some of the dailies. We're looking at, I like to use Bukola's words, now spoiled for choice. Okay, Vanguard newspaper is where we start from. Vanguard newspaper, U.S. raises fresh concerns, tax FG on stronger action. That's according to what has played out in the Kaduna abductions for today. So Bukola, this is where the U.S. is still maintaining what they believe it is. The Nigerian government has constantly said it is not only Christians that are targeted, Muslims are targeted. In fact, they argue that there are parts of the country where it is even more Muslims that are killed than Christians. But the United States, they will hold on to their own. There are places where Christians are targeted. We cannot dismiss that. There are places where Muslims are also targeted. So this back and forth, at the end of the day, what we're looking at is the sanctity of human life. According to the Nigerian Constitution, 1999 as amended, the least the government can do in Section 14 and other sections that has to do with the duty of government to its people is the protection of lives and property. The security and welfare of citizens is the primary responsibility of government because the people, they are supreme. In the United Kingdom, the king is supreme, so he's sovereign. Here, where we practice democracy, even if sometimes African democracy is in different shades and form, but primarily democracy says sovereignty belongs to the people. It is written in our constitution. And so the people decide who rules them, how they should be ruled, and what they need from their government. But the framers of our constitution have always maintained that the least you can do is to make sure that besides whatever it is, economy, and the rest of them that you put in place, you must make sure that people are alive. Everybody has a right to life. As a matter of fact, even if you get a criminal today, he is not guilty by the Constitution of the Federal Republic until proven guilty by a court of competent jurisdiction. So we have a responsibility on our hands. I think the messaging by the United States is to the effect that even though they hold the framing of Christian genocide, maybe for their personal interest, but we also know that Christians are targeted in parts of this country. We have testimonials to that effect. We cannot deny that. It's to the effect that, look, you need to start valuing the lives of your citizens. People cannot just stay in their houses or go to places of worship. At times of war, difficult times, if things are happening anywhere, one of the places you run to that is seen as a sanctuary is a house of worship, whether it's a mosque or a church or even a shrine. People are supposed to, back off. That whilst you are in your church or in your mosque worshiping your God, or even in your shrine, then somebody comes with guns and takes you out. No, it's failure of government. We're not saying the government is not doing anything, we're saying government is not doing enough. The day Nigerians will begin to feel a sense of security, a sense of safety, is when we see how government prioritizes the lives of our citizens. You see what happens when maybe in other climes, maybe United States and the rest of them, when something happens to citizens, you see how government rallies to protect, to rescue, whether it's health, whether it's security. You see the attention of government. But sometimes here, you see action, sometimes you don't see action. Then this recent one that just happened with the Kaduna incident, trying to manage the situation, but now it has blown in our faces and has further escalated what we've been trying to manage.
And just in reaction to that, Jeffrey, sometimes I would not like to call them the Islamic elite, but our brethren on the other side of the divide who want to challenge the narrative that it's Christians that are being killed predominantly, that the killings are happening on both sides. Some would quote the interview that the US president granted recently, particularly following the Christmas Day strikes in northwest Nigeria, where he acknowledged that indeed Muslims are being killed. But the US president in that interview reported by New York Times did double down on his position that it's the Christians that are being killed predominantly in Nigeria. While that continues to be a subject of debate back home here, we must, continue to push the definition of genocidal killings, which you always do well, to reinforce, Jeffrey, here on the program, that it is a matter of intent, not necessarily of number. So we're not talking about numbers here. And if we looked at the stories that have come through, particularly from Nigeria's North Central, and evidence abound from witnesses to events of killings here, they would talk about how after the killings have been done, their churches are burnt. So who does that? After killing people unprovoked, you go ahead and burn their places of worship. We can count the number of, attacks on churches in Nigeria's North Central, predominantly in the north, where worshippers have been targeted. And so can the intent be removed from this subject matter? If the intent can be removed, then we have taken out, that framing of genocidal killings. And that's where the debate continues. And until an acknowledgement is done, publicly by the Nigerian government, then there's still no commitment, there's no political will to address this matter holistically.
Yeah, well, I think we have the next one. You'll be taking the next one.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of which, let's head over to this Nigerian newspaper, which, is reporting something that came through yesterday from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. EFCC indicts fintechs, banks in 162 billion naira scams, accuses financial institutions of compromising banking procedures. And so we saw this story come through yesterday, Jeffrey. Quite a number of Nigerians falling for scams that have to do with, cheap airline tickets. And so, questions were asked yesterday about how Nigerians can fall for such scams, where, especially where Nigerians mostly would book their, whether it's international or domestic travel tickets with, a local travel agency. So how do you know which is authentic and which is a counterfeit agency, and then you fall for such scams? Because 162 billion naira is quite a number, Jeffrey.
This conversation, we're not ready to have it. As far as this headline of what this Nigeria is leading with, when it comes to the thing, people are desperate on one hand, and there's a lot of, I believe, there's a lot of malpractice within the financial sector that the government needs to look into. Places that are not all commerce, that are technical to understand, it is easy to perpetrate all kinds of fraud, and you will not even know this is fraud in that sense. The level of deductions we see and all of those things. But this is primarily talking about some of these scams that has been reported by this daily, and it's just to minimize it, if you will. Maybe you may not be able to eradicate it, because even claims that technology is even more advanced. We see some of these things. In fact, we've seen some people being scammed right away outside their own jurisdiction. So you see, they say, oh, somebody in somewhere is scammed the U.S. government of this, that, and the other. So as a matter of fact, I will say that our banking system, for instance, if you compare to others, we've done well in several parts of our banking system, in terms of speed, in terms of certain kinds of efficiency. But within all of that, there's a lot of things that the government needs to look into and probe as quickly as possible. But let's look at this Guardian newspaper before we leave and get started with the conversation. The Guardian is saying how poor services, high cost, easy drug access fuel addiction crisis. I like the way Guardian always illustrates their stories, and I think you should go to page 4 and 5 and look at what they consider to be their big story. Since the reform that took place in Nigeria under President Bola Tinubu, a lot of things went to the roof. We've had interviews with people that were diabetic and see the high cost of medication and all of that. So sometimes people have died not because there is no service or whatever that is provided for them. It's just because they can't afford some of these medication. And then the issue of easy drug access, feeling all kinds of addiction, is another conversation altogether. And I don't want to even expatiate even further because sometimes this addiction may not necessarily be hard drugs. It may just be a way to relieve pain that becomes a way of life, you know, for people who may not be able to afford totally taking care of the main issue that they are dealing with. So in terms of trying to relieve a particular pain in their life, they take the easy one to just to manage it for the time being, and you know the knock-on effect it can have on people's kidneys and all of that. So I think it's a good read, and I like the way Guardian always illustrates it. So you can see the bottle that takes, you put your pill, holding onto the man's legs as much as he wants to run, is all over him and all of that. So let's see how all of this will bring some kind of consciousness within the health sector. I know Ali Halted, the Minister of Health and the coordinating minister of that sector, say he's done a lot in terms of that, but sometimes I want to see even more. I want to see in practice of what this intervention of government is. Bukola, sometimes what happens is if you're not buoyant enough, in fact, the average middle-income person, one dangerous ailment can just take you down to poverty. And that's why we need to do something quickly in terms of access to proper health care, cost of medication, cost of healthcare services, at least for as many people as can afford it.
And you know, we had a conversation with a pharmacist here weeks ago, and who, you know, expressed the view vehemently also that, you know, it is the absence of regulation that makes it easy for, you know, Nigerians to indulge in, you know, different forms of drug abuse. We can't even mention the many levels of drug abuse here because it would be a sort of, you know, a soft way of,
on his own.
Yeah, you know, besides that, you know, a soft way of encouraging people to get to know about these drugs and then going there to purchase them. And so in the pharmaceutical sector, there requires more regulation, more vigilance. And there's nothing wrong with asking people if you have a prescription of a medical practitioner before going ahead to make a sale of a drug. Let's get to the New Telegraph. But we
yeah, we're
out of time, right?
We're totally out of time. But you can see the New Telegraph leading with that security story as far as the U.S. is concerned. So as we did say, it's an ongoing conversation. We'll continue to look at it. But we have a broad conversation with a huge panel, so we want to start us quite early. And that has to do with voting in 2027. So my question to you, which Yiaga Africa conducted with a sample size of about 1,500 or so, and they have a report to say 77% of people in Nigeria say they'll vote, but they have a concern. We're going to look at that concern as well. Stay with us in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. It's still the morning brief on Channels Television. And this morning, we'll start off the first leg of our conversation with something very, very critical. And it has to do with our electoral process. Yiaga Africa has conducted a survey that is quite revealing about who wants to vote in 2027 and why you want to vote in 2027. And in fact, the survey lets us know that quite a number of Nigerians, in a departure of what you would have thought, want to vote, but they're afraid for their lives. Violence is key. And of course, there's also regional disparities shaping the outcomes of this survey to the effect that more people in some parts of the country want to vote than the others. So let's find out more about what's inside this survey. And we have a panel this morning that will help us understand this survey and what can be done about it ahead of 2027. Joining us, we have Madam Cynthia Mbamalu. She's the Director of Programs, Yiaga Africa. We also have Mr. Yusuf Dentale, Chairman, Interparty Advisory Council. And also joining us is Mr. Ladan Saliu, a chieftain of the African Democratic Congress. Lady and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm told that we also have Mr. Ini Ememobong of the People's Democratic Party, the National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. Gentlemen and lady, thank you for joining us. I don't think I've heard an acknowledgement yet. I hope all our devices are unmuted such that we can all hear. Okay,
good morning.
So I want to start with Ms. Mbamalu. Thank you for joining us on the program. First of all, take us through the high points of this survey, the sample size also, so we know how representative it is of the views of the generality of Nigerians.
Thank you and good morning. I mean, the major high point for us is the fact that Nigerians still believe in democracy, because if you have a high percentage of citizens who have the intention or who would love to vote, who have the intention to vote at 77%, it shows that people still have faith in democracy. And I think that is the high point. The bigger question is, how do we translate this intention to vote into actual voting? But like you mentioned, this survey was actually conducted in December 2025, from the 1st to the 5th of December. And we had a representative random sample size of 1,500 across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. However, you know, as statistics implies, we have 95% confidence rate in our data and a margin of error of plus or minus 4.2%, which is less than 5%. And so for us, it is the data is quite representative, and this is the first in a series because we'll be conducting several series moving towards the next elections. The idea one was to understand how voters think, the intention of voters towards the next elections, to understand the driving force, what are the driving forces behind voters' intention, and what are the factors that could either inhibit or support voters turning up to vote, and importantly, assessing the confidence level in the electoral process and the elections management body. And so the survey in itself is quite representative, and we looked at respondents from different age categories. So beginning exactly from those who are 18 and above, because we focused on the voting age, so 18 and above. And so you see the data disaggregated between 18 to 35 and 36 to 60. And then we also looked at a gender representation to ensure that we had representation of both gender at almost the same percentages. And then we looked at income, so educational qualification and income of different respondents. The idea was to have quite representative samples, looking at different factors that influence how voters engage and how voters make their decision. And so if you ask me what were the major high points, I think it's clear 77% of Nigerians have the intention to vote. However, from these percentages of Nigerians, about 42%, their major fear is a fear for electoral violence. And you wouldn't disassociate that with the current reality, because the worry is that this is just at this stage, if the security situation worsens, it would create further fear in the minds of voters and limit voter participation. But then there's also the question around the trust in the Electoral Commission. Only 45% of the voters, of the respondents, expressed trust or confidence in the Electoral Commission. That is important data because if you look at how voters engage, once there is low confidence in the elections management body, it affects how they perceive outcomes and how they engage the electoral process. And so if you look at the data is telling us that across the geopolitical zone, there is lower trust in the South-South and the Southeastern region. And if you connect this data to the data on intention to vote, that is also the region. Those are the two regions that express lower intention in voter participation. And so if I even want to go out of our data, if you look at the current CBR data by the Electoral Commission, the new registration of voters ongoing in the country, you would also notice that those two regions are the regions with the least percentages of voter registration. I think only Delta is the outlier in the South-South that has an increase in the number of voter registration. So if you connect the data from the survey with the current realities on how participation is going on, at least with the first process, which is the continuous voter registration, you can see some correlation. And the bigger question is, how do we address the challenges that this survey has highlighted towards the next election? And maybe my last point before I stop here is there are three important factors voters are interested in that would inspire their participation. The first is obviously security. The second is the quality of candidates. And this brings me to the point of the role of political parties. Most times our parties forget that they are an important and critical situation. They are important and they are critical when it comes to how citizens engage the electoral process and believe in democracy. So as long as we don't have quality candidates that voters can connect with and associate themselves with, it would affect their interest, one, in participation, and it would limit their enthusiasm to turn out to vote on election day. And so we need to also begin to call on our political class, because if we do not have quality or credible candidates, voters would not be interested in showing up to vote. And if we have this trend of parties moving, this new tendency of moving to a one-party state, what happens is we limit options. And when we don't have options and quality and credible options, you limit voters' choice and voters' turnout. I think the last part from that is logistics. So you can get security right. We need quality candidates, but we need improved elections logistics management, because voters want to turn out in their numbers. They want to come out and materials and personnel are present at the right time, and they want to see efficiency in how elections are administered. And I think this survey is quite insightful. It's very informative, and it gives us enough time to start planning towards the next elections, because what is our elections if voters don't turn out? We spend billions on elections. Look at the budget for elections in the national budget for this year, because the planning is already ongoing. If you see the amount we spend on the elections, we must do everything to get the numbers to count so that our fund actually serves its purpose in administering credible and transparent elections in Nigeria.
All right. A very detailed survey and very easy to understand. You just have to go to the website of Yiaga Africa, and you'll find this survey and digest it and, ask the necessary questions. Of course, the conversation continues. But let me come to Dr. Saliu of the African Democratic Congress, because the survey is quite revealing about the responsibility of political parties on many levels. The dominance of intention of voting seen in some regions as against the others, the percentage of Nigerians that have a low trust quotient in the electoral umpire, these information show the extent to which political parties are carrying out their responsibilities or not carrying out their responsibilities. I know that there are quite a number of high points that you'll want to react to. But first of all, let's talk about the Northwest and Northeast having 67% and 45% of intention, demonstration of intention to vote in the coming elections. Dr. Saliu. Dr. Saliu, that's for you. Did you hear me?
Well, thank you so very much. First of all, let let me congratulate Yiaga, Africa. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh dear. Seems to be like the network is. Dr. Saleh, I don't know what's going on with your network, but we also can you hear us? Okay. We're also trying to get.
I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. We were not hearing what you were saying. I don't know. The network was distorting your words. So please go ahead, sir.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to, Nigerians should congratulate Yiaga Africa for a very comprehensive and defining report. Study going forward. The research was excellent, and to me, it's a clarion call, for a wake-up call for Nigerians generally, and for every democratic-minded, people. To read the report thoroughly and digest it and understand some of the intricacies and the troubling points of our own, elections going forward and how we can improve it. Now, the report shows that the preponderance of voters in the northwest and the northeastern part of the country, are eager to vote. This is entirely because of the charged, if you like, the charged political atmosphere. A lot of people are, are having, worries. They are, not particularly impressed by the way politics is being done, and they believe that their votes will count. And so they can't wait for 2027 to cast their votes and see if they can, by doing so, can change the narrative and elect, credible and credit-worthy candidates that will change the face of politics in those regions in particular, but in Nigeria in general. And I am convinced that some of the figures you see in the Northwest, as expressed in the report, 67% and 47% or thereabout in the Northeast. They also explains the kind of predicament that the people, in those regions are going through, the issues of insecurity, the issues of poverty, the socially vulnerable groups that have lost faith in government and the capacity of government to deliver them from the challenges of life and living and the constraints, that they go through under the shackles of poverty day in, day out. So I am convinced that these figures that you see, 67% in the Northwest and 43 or thereabout in the Northeast, just explains the existential predicament of the people in those regions to the conditions of life and living in these areas. And I want to believe that there will be a lot of surge in, voter registration or revalidation going forward through, looking at these reports. The insecurity issue is very, very intricate. It's very delicate. And it also defines some of the sentiments and the fears and the perceptions of the people, about the way government is handling these issues. So basically the report, like I said at the beginning, is a wake-up call to Nigerian government, to institutions of the state that are controlling crime and criminality and violence, and the electoral empire that is the electoral umpire, that is INEC, to rise to the occasion to address some of the genuine fears and worries and perceptions, and managing those perceptions truthfully and sincerely for the general interest of our public. I am convinced that this report, if it is studied and bicycled around institutions to understand the delicate nature of the challenges we have going forward, it will serve the country and democracy better.
All right, Mr. Sali, let's take it to Mr. Nyememabong in Abuja studio. I understand Mr. Dantale Yusuf of IPAC has also joined us in Abuja studio. Mr. Yusuf, thank you for coming on the program. Ms. Aini, and we're also supposed to have the APC National Publicity Secretary, but perhaps there's been some mix-up. Maybe he will join us later on in the program because we want to have an expansive panel of both the ruling, opposition, IPAC, and the civil society organization. That's why we have ADC, APC, we're supposed to have APC, PDP, IPAC, and of course, Yiaga Africa. Ms. Aini, let's come to you. This document, I'm sure, is very good for any political party that is interested in winning the election, because this is where strategy comes in. I want to know, and maybe Nigerians want to understand, from what you've seen so far, let's stay with the intention to vote, for instance. You're seeing that the Northwest and the Northeast, they're ruling in the number. Northwest, for instance, 67% of the vote, of the voters say, from the sample side, they say they are interested in voting. And then you see the South-South and the Southeast saying, look, for some of the reasons listed, they don't trust the system and all of that. How, for instance, is the PDP looking, how will the PDP look at this particular data and be strategic about the next election?
Yeah, Jeff, good morning, and glad to be here. First is to thank Yiaga Africa for this very data-driven disposition. And immediately our politics gets to the point of being data-driven. It makes it more predictable. And elections are the nexus of electoral democracy. And therefore, we must ensure that these processes are very well done. And I thank them for disaggregating the data, because it's one thing to have data, it's another thing to disaggregate the data, it's another thing to communicate the data. So, what that shows, like Dr. just said, is the fact that you have more people in the Northwest and Northeast, which are undoubtedly Nigeria's most troubled spots if you take away the North Central. And you know, there are times when things happen and you're asking, why are these things happening? And you're asking, so what can I do to ensure that this thing doesn't happen again? So I'm sure it's a natural reaction to the insecurity, to the lived experience that the people in the Northeast and Northwest are having. Now, when you get to the South-South and Southeast, you do know that, and you see that the trust quotient for the elections are very low, because you know the manner. And if you piggyback to even election results, you would see that the election results coming from the South-South and Southeast, particularly the Southeast, have always been very low. And it speaks to confidence, because immediately people think the most critical element in an election is the institutionalized uncertainty, meaning that irrespective of what the poll says, on the morning of elections, people who are contesting and those who are voting must not be too sure of who is going to win, meaning that even the person who is being pitched by polls and everyone, you know, must have some palpitations on the morning of election. That is why you would find that at the time when, if you check other democracies, the polls were saying when Hillary and Trump were contesting that, oh, Hillary was winning. But, I mean, you discover that up until when the election is announced, people, even the eventual winner, is still afraid. There's still some degree of palpitation. So when that is not so, when people can predetermine, you know, 3 months, 4 months to an election, the election becomes an event which is uneventful, meaning that it is just a date on the calendar. So people begin to lose interest in it. And so that is by my thinking, what is happening to the South-South and Southeast. Because over time, you have seen where the outcomes are predictable, you can see that people are now disillusioned, and people are now saying, do our votes count? And that critical question takes you to where you have many people, the percentage differential between those who have an intention to vote and those who trust the electoral umpire. And incidentally, you cannot divorce the electoral umpire from the elections. And like Cynthia said, while it is still work in progress, the conversion of an intention to an actual act is a work in progress, and a lot of things may happen that may add to the 77% or may detract from it, which is why this information is very important. And when you take that to the fact that last election cycle, only less than 27% of registered voters voted, it means that there's a challenge. Yes, more people have intentions now to vote, and I like the fact that she took us through the processes of data acquisition that shows representation. I like the fact that the representation is a mirror, is a very near mirror representation of Nigeria's demographics in terms of population, gender, and the age. So what that speaks to is that if 27% of the people voted in the last election and a winner emerged with less than 40%, 37% about that, it shows the crisis that we are going through, meaning that 26 years into democracy, democratic consolidation has not taken root to the point where people trust the institutions. How won't that trust deficit be there when you're promised by the electoral umpire that, look, we have a back end, we have IREV, and at the point of going to court, you now discover that the electoral umpire disowns his own innovation. How would you trust a system that the card system in 2015 did not recognize most people, and in some parts of the country you saw that incident forms were used, other parts. So this is historical. It must not be taken just as a 2025 survey. It reflects historical anticipation, historical disappointments. So what does a political party like us take from this? This is information free of charge. And I must thank Yiaga Africa, because this is something that political parties pay a lot of money to do for themselves and are doing for themselves. But this Yiaga Africa data gives us another lens, because sometimes you pay people, and sometimes the people, the agencies you pay, tell you what you want to hear. So you just have confirmation bias. But coming from Yiaga Africa, with their dispassionate disposition, this gives us an opportunity to compare and contrast, to juxtapose the data we have with what is coming. And I can tell you that it is very strategic, and when put to use, will become very useful, not just to political parties. The elections in 2027 is not about a winner, it's about who wins Nigerians, the hearts of Nigerians, not just who wins the positions.
Let's take it to Mr. Yusuf, who is seated by us, who is the chairman of IPAC. So you are the chairman of all the political parties here. But one thing seemed to be coming up, chairman of the chairman, I think that's how I wanted to say it. One thing keeps coming up, that is and I'm interested in this particular data that has to do with trust in INEC, which according to Yiaga is a bit fragile, or significantly fragile if you will, because if 65% do not trust INEC, that is a big problem. Or is it 65 now? I want to be sure, 55, it should be 55. 45 have confidence, that means 55 don't have confidence, if my math is right. And if you go to the South, South, and Southeast, that number is heavily represented. So for you, let's begin to talk about what the leadership of INEC needs to start doing. I know we have not gotten to recommendations, so first I will ask for your own characterization of this report, and then straight to the issue of what the current leadership of INEC, because having a fresh leadership should bring fresh confidence. But this data that was just done in December looks like leadership hasn't changed anything so much as far as INEC is concerned.
Thank you. Good morning once again. And I will start by thanking and congratulating or commending the Yiaga Africa for championing this noble cause of pathfinding to our electoral credibility and inclusion. And to congratulate Nigerians to at least who have endured 26 years of democratic practice, and I believe we will be better in as much as we are not where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be. is talking about credibility. We must look at this thing from the foundation of the issue. We have two distinct institutions or agencies responsible for the conduct of election in this country, recognized or set up by the Constitution. We have the Independent National Electoral Commission and the State Independent Electoral Commission. In most cases, the average Nigerian doesn't really know the difference between this SIEC and INEC. But we are on our own and trying to, as much as possible, to create this awareness. Let me go back first. Now, one of the things IPAC have been doing since my leadership came up is we try to look at election or democracy from the foundation. Local government is the government that is closest to the people. And then the election conducted by SIEC is nothing compared to election. Okay? Then if you look at the elections conducted by INEC, people buy votes, politicians buy votes, even though vote buying is an aberration. We vehemently reject it. We do not welcome it. But what does that indicate? It means there is value in the elections conducted by INEC. And the elections conducted by SIEC, nobody buy votes. So what that means is that there are no votes to buy. It is allocation of votes. So the average Nigerian, most times, especially at the local level, does not really know the difference between elections that is conducted by INEC and that is conducted by SIEC. Election in the last, the 2023 general elections, yes, there's a lot of voter apathy, but what we saw there, the 27 or 24% that we have, is a true reflection of voters because of the cleaning up of voters register embarked upon with the introduction of beavers, okay, by INEC under the leadership of Professor Mahmoud. That allocation was no longer possible. So you see that what was used to buy vote increased at all levels. So we'll continue to educate Nigeria, to create this awareness at all levels on the need to come out to see that vote counts. In the election of 2023, we saw where sitting governors could not make senatorial elections. It happened in Enugu, it happened in Benue, it happened in Kebbi. We saw Peter Obi came, who had no councillor anywhere, who had no House of Assembly members anywhere. But look at the performance of Peter Obi. That tells you that votes count. So what we should be doing is to encourage Nigerians to have more confidence in the system. Yet INEC is not perfect. There are bad elements in INEC, but that doesn't mean all what is done in INEC is not good. So we have also been urging INEC to fish out the bad elements in INEC and get them prosecuted. Even the security agencies, we must learn to begin to prosecute members of the judiciary, members of the security agency, members of INEC who are found wanting in some of these anomalies in the electoral process. But also urging the National Assembly to look into the recommendations or the proposals made by all stakeholders in respect of the Constitution and the Electoral Act amendment. Because so many recommendations that are wonderful recommendations made by Nigerians, but IPAC in particular, some of our recommendation is the scrapping of SIEC so that INEC conduct all elections and elections at all levels. If INEC conduct election, look at the elections, area council election conducted by INEC in the FCT. No political party takes it all. But for all the elections conducted at the state by SIEC, the sitting governor of that state will determine who becomes what. So there's no contest. So this have to change. And this is largely responsible for some of the socioeconomic ills that was in the country in general. Because Nigerians are not allowed to vote the people, or they do not have the opportunity to vote the people that they really know, that they really trust, to rule them at the councillorship and then local government chairmanship level. This must change. So it is an appeal to all of us to come together to make this country at the democratic space better.
You know,
Yiaga
Mr.
Africa has done very well.
If I may come in there, you know, the survey does confirm some of the things that you're saying. For instance, you know, one part of the survey that is quite compelling is that many young voters view elections as transactionals. 48% of young voters. Now, compare that with 68% of the elderly who view elections as a civic duty, not as transaction. But young people view it as, you know, a transactional. And that speaks to the role of political parties. But I'll bring my next question now to Ms. Mbamalu. There's another aspect of the survey that speaks to the role of political parties. And I want you to provide interventions here from the point of view of a, you know, civil society advocate to tell us whether or not the political parties are living up to their billing, you know, their functions. 76% of Nigerians are unaware of recent electoral reforms. And young Nigerians between 18 to 35 are less likely to vote than middle-aged voters from 36 to 60 years. So this speaks to the role of political parties. Why is this vacuum if they're indeed doing their work?
Well, I guess I'll begin with the last point of your question. It's, are they really doing their work? That is where the bigger question is. Our political parties have struggled since our transition to democracy to properly build institutions and structures that would enable the sustainability of a party system that drives democracy. So what we have is a democracy without Democrats in political parties. So you cannot be a Democrat, a party in a democracy, and do not you do not believe or share democratic practices or live through democratic practices. And what do I mean by that? The first is parties have consistently failed in their role to promote civic and democratic democracy education. We think most times it's an INEC's role to conduct voter and civic education. Yes, INEC has a role with that, but parties ordinarily ought to invest in civic and voter education, because one way to expand knowledge on electoral reforms is for parties to actually break this down to what it means in real terms to their party faithfuls and to voters as part of its mobilization strategy. But parties are failing consistently in doing that. The second is parties are also failing to inspire confidence in our democracy through their actions. Earlier, I made a remark around our gradual trend moving towards one-party state. Is because what we have are politicians who are parts of political parties but do not have an ideology or shared values or shared purpose in that party. So what they view parties as are just simple tools for accessing political power. And so if any party would give me better chance of winning an election, I move to that party. I don't care about democracy. So what we have is a recycling of individuals in different parties without a clear party ideology or clear party identity. And so when we do not have clear party ideology or clear party identity, what we have are just individuals who are dealing with identity crisis and are basically rascally in their actions, because we just move from one party to the next. We're not interested in how citizens engage the process. We're not interested in building trust and confidence in democracy. So our parties are failing, and this data has shown us that. You talked about 76% do not know about electoral reform. Younger voters between 18 to 35, so basically Gen Zs and some parts of millennials, do not believe in voting. That's what we call the youth paradox. They would engage online, but they are not willing to turn out to vote. They don't think they have the least intention to vote. And they view the elections as transactional. What is that telling us? One, our political parties have failed. They need to wake up to their responsibility. Because one way to inspire youth trust and youth confidence in the process is to review your strategy on reaching out to this particular category of voters.
All right, and I'm so glad that the political parties are well represented here. So, Mr. Memabong, you have the verdict. Dr. Ladan Saliu, you have the verdict. I'll begin with you, Dr. Saliu. Please respond to the verdict that you have received from Ms. Mbamalu.
Well, first of all, I think while she is, to an extent, right and correct, there are also other impediments. First and foremost, the Independent National Electoral Commission. Once you don't have a very credible and credit-worthy and trusted institution that superintends over the entire process, then confidence begins to erode. Credibility matters. And when you look at the figures by Yiaga, 52% of the respondents say they don't. The INEC has no impact, and then 12% say categorically that INEC has a negative impact. When you put the two together, that's 64% negative perception of INEC. And so you ask yourself as a citizen, does the zebra change its colors? Does the leopard change its spots? And I think these are some of the issues. I don't necessarily believe that you should pile all the negativities on political parties. Yes, we have a role to play, but that is the role we must play in terms of upgrading political culture and socialization and engaging the public to understand their own rights, responsibilities, and duties to the state during campaign and elections. That is a given. But the core aspect of voter education and cleaning up the process to building confidence into Nigerians to believe that the system can be there to be trusted and to work for them is in the hands of the institutions. One of them, most important, is INEC. And so if you have a loss of trust in institutions that are inextricably linked or connected to the success of an election, then you have a problem. And so my own this is
Dr. Saliu, we're beginning to have challenges with
yes,
your connection.
The political parties must, upgrade their own internal mechanisms of engagement. Then I will yield the space when the connection is re-established so that the others can contribute.
All right. Let's bring in Ms. Memabong. You also respond to the question that Bukola did ask. But in addition to that, I'm looking at what will drive voting choices in 2027. Surprisingly, economic conditions just stands at 17%. Quality of candidates is standing at 21%. This is important because what happens is either we see the same set of people or people that don't inspire the voters to come out. So I would like you to speak to the verdict by Cynthia of Yiaga Africa, as well as this issue around the quality of candidates, what your party, for instance, is doing about it ahead of 2027.
Yeah, absolutely. The reflection of politicians, their behavior, while in political parties, is symptomatic of what is happening outside, because we are a mere microcosm of the larger society. It is centered around politics without principles. It's centered about the loss, the erosion of values, general values in society. And so when any society that commodifies values and places wealth at the echelon of its value system would always fall the way we are falling. So like Cynthia said, I agree with her. Politicians now see political parties as a special purpose vehicle, and you hear them say it when they are defecting, that look, this vehicle takes you, the vehicle that takes you to Lagos must not be the vehicle that you use to run around in Lagos. So one vehicle takes you to Abuja and the other vehicle takes you around Abuja, and probably when you're coming back home you take another one. That is the transactional nature that many politicians, which is what is fueling the drift to the one-party system, because people think that, look, even the politicians themselves, if this survey was done on politicians and those who want to contest election, you see that they don't even trust the system, which is why they are saying, look, let's go over to the ruling party. So what does this portend for us? What it portends is the fact that I like truly that this data is emerging, and what to do is that political parties must know that their choices of candidates count. It matters. Why does it matter? Because people follow people. Away from the people, they are undecided voters who are neither who belong to any or who do not belong to any of the political parties, and are trying to listen to say who has the best message, whose message resonates with my values and the things I know. So if we do not have new introductions into the system, like my brother said, at the introduction of the Peter Obi with a new message the last time, you also saw that a lot of voters who did not vote previously followed the message. The fact that you have a demography that engages online but reduces, that engagement reduces as it comes to physical engagement, is also showing that the issues of security are critical. But now, so what's the PDP doing about that? That's why under the Turaki-led administration, we are getting a rebirth process to engage with these young people. The data we have also shows that if we engage with these young people and those who refuse to vote, those who haven't voted before, who are voting for the first time, and those who refuse to vote the other time, and what are the things they're demanding? They demand internal democracy. They want to be sure that their voices are heard first within the political party, and that if their voices are heard in candidate selection process, leadership emergence, that it means they can now have trust in the larger elections that will be coming. So for us as a political party, we are listening more. We are opening more channels of listening than channels of talking. So the leadership has more ears than mouth, which is why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So that is what we are doing, to ensure that we can listen to them. What are the pain points? What are the issues that affect them? How do these things affect them? And how do they want us to respond to it? Because it is not just the issue of what in this data. It's also the issue of how and why. Why are we changing? Are we just changing so that we can manipulate them to get their votes for election? No, we are changing because we need to entrench the political culture that democratization and democracy becomes normative.
Ms. Eni, we wish we had more. This conversation is an ongoing one. Today is just perhaps the first phase because there's a lot to explore with this data. Let's come to Mr. Yusuf, and there's a slide I want to show you from Yiaga. This is their submission, and Bukola's words might be verdict. What will increase turnout in 2027? And when they asked the people, they carried out a survey with the 67% of them say if they see better security, they will show up. 43% say more credible candidates, they will show up. 35% say improve INEC logistics. So if you fix these three, Nigerians will show up. Do you agree? Mr. Yusuf, that's for you.
Before I talk on this, I will still want to add lend my voice to the earlier discussions on the perception of younger Nigerians seeing politics as transactional. These things, we have to tie them together. You have to solve a problem from the root of that problem. I have said this several times, and IPAC have been saying this several times. You see, you don't make, if the moment you condition a system to be transactional, there is no way you will stop the individual from being transactional. The political parties are supposed to be public institutions, not individual institutions. So if they are public institutions, they are supposed to be funded by the public, by the system, by the government. This is what was tenable. But here today, the National Assembly in the past have withdrawn the subvention given to political parties. Now political parties are left to figure out how to run their activities. So what will that take us to? It will now take us to who have the deeper pocket to take over the financial affairs of the party. And by extension, who pays the piper dictate the tune of the music. So it is, you have indirectly handed over the parties to those who have the money to run. And for whoever run it will determine who becomes what at the party. So that determines the quality of candidacy. people, those who sponsor, who finance the parties, will now bring in those who are loyal to them, okay, to occupy positions in the party, by extension, occupy positions in the administration of governance, or in governance in the loyal society. That is where we are. So where we need to concentrate our effort more, it is that the quality of candidates, that how are candidates being produced by political parties, before we talk about INEC. Because political party does, I think, I would say 70 to 80% of the process. The process of bringing up the primary elections. As long as parties do not have money to run their affairs, to be on independently, and rely on certain individuals to do it, this system will continue to be transactional. And then, for issue of this, when you talk the security we are talking about, I mentioned this earlier, that the quality of government we have at the local government. In the past, local government embark on things like construction of feeder road, clinic, schools, market square, but today it's not like that. In certain states, we are aware that the governors, after imposing, coronating their local government chairman, the boys who are loyal to them as chairman, and the allocation come, what happens? They just bring them to one place, do what they abracadabra, and then the money goes back to this, where it came from, at the state level. So some of this must be addressed. There must be independence. Thanks to President Ahmed Ashwaju Bola Tinubu, his administration tried to enthrone financial autonomy at the local government level. The Supreme Court made a declaration, but till today, we are yet to see the implementation of that judgment. So it is wrong. We have to begin to look at this, because we have to tie our economic life to our political life, to our social life. As long as people are not able to feed themselves or take care of their basic needs, or government is absent, you are calling for innovations, and that innovations will come in form of conventional crimes, that we have insecurity. So even if you deploy anything to kill or arrest some of these criminals, they will still be as coming. So we have to look at the foundation. Why are we arresting and killing and fighting them, and they still keep on coming? In the words of Robert Bridges, he said people react to social situations in 5 ways. The first one, conform. The second one, innovate. The third one, retreat. The fourth, ritualize. And then the fifth one, rebel against the system. So we have to go. Our problem is foundational. We must not take one aspect and then leave the other.
Very important points you've made there. The electoral system is very, very connected to the socioeconomic challenges that we're experiencing as a nation. And, you know, a very critical part of the survey speaks about the lack of confidence in INEC. And so INEC was supposed to have been represented on this panel, but, you know, in the last couple of years, we've hardly seen, you know, direct communication between INEC and the people, especially in the mainstream media, beyond statements. And this is a call to INEC to be more open, to have an open door policy, because INEC is supposed to be responding as well to aspects of this survey. But we must anchor at this point. It's an ongoing conversation. Again, the report is available on Yiaga Africa's website. You can, you know, access the report and continue the conversation online. The very first test for this survey would be the coming elections in Ekiti and Osun. And, you know, more recently, closer, I beg your pardon, would be the area council elections in the FCT. We must thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming on the program. We've been talking with the programs director of Yiaga Africa, Cynthia Mbamalu. We've also had Mr. Eni Ememebong, who is the National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, joining us on this segment. Thank you very much, sir. And we've also had Mr. Yusuf Dantale of the Independent Party Advisory Council joining us on this program. And not forgetting Dr. Ladan Saliu of the African Democratic Congress and former Director General of the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, FRCN. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we'll pause for a moment now. When we return, we'll head to Rivers, well, for a conversation, not physically, on the state of the impeachment process, especially following that letter by the Chief Judge of Rivers State to the State Assembly. So stay with us for this next one. We'll be right back.
Let's bring in our guests on the development in Rivers State. The House of Assembly had started the process of impeachment, and after the governor did not respond by their own submission, they've activated the proceedings and asked the Chief Judge to set up the panel of investigation that has about 3 months to look at all of the allegations, gross allegations leveled against the governor. Well, the Chief Judge has now responded to say, due to some court orders and all of that, he will not be proceeding with constituting a panel, perhaps pending the determination of those court processes. Douglas Obankwa is a constitutional lawyer and policy analyst. He joins us virtually from Benin City, the Edo State capital. Mr. Obankwa, thank you so much for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, Nigerians.
I want to read section 188, subsection 10 for your interpretation, whether it's pre-setting of the panel or after setting up of the panel. Subsection 10 of 188 that has to do with impeachment process says no proceedings or determination of the panel or of the House of Assembly or any matter relating to such proceedings or determination shall be entertained or questioned in any court. At what point is the Constitution envisaging that the court should stay out of this? Is it pre-setting the panel or when the panel has finally been activated? Because that is what the other end is arguing, said the court is not supposed to be involved in this.
Brilliant question. Now, you see, the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended by the 5th alteration, actually is an adoption of the 1979 Constitution. The first real case of impeachment that had a judicial interpretation was the impeachment or the attempted impeachment of Abubakar Rimi, the governor of Kaduna State, in the Second Republic. And this same section of the Constitution was also enshrined in the 1979 Constitution, and the court in that particular impeachment process indicated that there is an abstract clause that the parliamentary powers of the State House of Assembly to impeach cannot be impugned by the court. However, after the coming into democracy following the prolonged period of military rule in 1999, there were several incidences of impeachment. Perhaps the first being that took place in Anambra State, where there was an attempt to impeach Governor Chris Ngige of Anambra State. I am privileged to write my long thesis to get my LLB on that particular impeachment process, and I've written a book on the removal of the governor in Nigeria. And to tell you that the position of the law right now is that there are about 11 processes, section 181 to 11, that must take place before a governor can be removed. Now, the authority of Domlong and Plateau State House of Assembly is of the Domlong and Dari is of the authority that where there is any kind of breach by the House of Assembly, that is to say, they did not follow the express provisions of the Constitution. And mind you, those 11 processes are sequential in nature, and there are timelines and there are thresholds. For example, it's only when you have 1/3 members bring an allegation in the House of Assembly that the impeachment process can be activated. And after that is done, the House, by way of a resolution, the Speaker, the Chief Judge, to set up the 7-man panel, which must include people service, they do not belong to any political party. However, what we have right now in Rivers State is that we have two injunctions, two ex parte injunctions that have restrained the chief judge from constituting the panel. That is where we have the cul-de-sac. This is a novelty that requires some level of stimulation at the Supreme Court. And the chief judge, in his letter to the Speaker of the House, indicated that aside the fact that there are two injunctions against him to set up the panel that would investigate the gross misconduct against Governor Fubara, that indeed the case is at the Court of Appeal. And following the authority of the case of the governor of Lagos State and Ojukwu, when a case is in court, parties are to maintain status quo. That is to say, following the doctrine of least spending, once a case is in court, you are not expected to take actions that would compromise the determination of the matter in court. So following our judicial precedent, the Chief Judge has written to the Speaker. So to answer your question, my dear brother, it can be activated at any point. What is important is whether or not the House of Assembly has followed the very rigorous and cumbersome provisions that have been put there. And mind you, the definition of gross misconduct is no longer as wide as it used to be. Is it local Jew and the case that took place, is it Osun State, the Osun State case? The Supreme Court indicated what gross misconduct is.
Very quickly.
They were so specific as to what gross misconduct is. As opposed to when Congressman Darren Fox said that it is what the majority of the House says it is.
If I may come in there very quickly, should we begin to give any interpretation or raise eyebrows as to the position expressed by the Chief Judge, knowing how litigations go in this country? And we could cite a number of cases, the Ibadan court intervention in the PDP matter and the many other, court rulings on the PDP convention. So if this is coming from Rivers State, should we raise eyebrows and say that, there are political undertones coloring the position expressed by the Chief Judge?
My dear sister, the thing is that the court remains the only place where you are sure that process and procedure will play out before a decision will be taken. And I want Nigerians to know that they are kind of, well, I say the way they tend to malign our courts. We know that we may have issues with some of the judgments that come out of our courts. However, I tell you, at the end of the day, the court still remains a veritable shield against arbitrary use of power. Now, you also realize that this same court condemns, that the Supreme Court that condemns Governor Fubara's shenanigans of demolishing a House of Assembly. We have had, and this is very important because we need to begin to interrogate the way our governors run the state. And I have said this severally. If the president of Nigeria runs Nigeria the way our governors run, none of the governors will be governors. It is important for our government that we have three tiers, three organs of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And that those three organs of government have its constitutional shares between them. And also, it is also important for them to know that there is balance of power, there is separation of power. And that the reason we have separation of power is so that we will be able to have some balance of power. So the governors most times consume the legislature, and I dare say the judiciary under them. And that is why you see, we find that we must are not governors. In any case, we also need a vibrant House of Assembly. A House of Assembly, what is happening in Rivers is very interesting. A House of Assembly that can call the governor to question. Because what has really happened in Nigeria after the Obasanjo administration is that most governors have the House of Assembly into made government house agency. You have seen House of Assembly meeting the government house. You have seen a House of Assembly, it is in the case in those states, under Governor Godwin Obaseki, being inaugurated by 9:30 at night. So it is important that we all know the democracy that we share. It's right.
All right, Mr.
When we
Agbankwa.
adhere to the rule
Yeah,
of law.
Mr. Agbankwa, great point you've made. Sometimes in Nigeria, the more you look, the less you see. But what we've tried to do is to bring to the fore what the law says and what the law doesn't say. And we'll see how this plays out eventually. It's a pity that a state like River State has been unstable politically since the inception of this administration of similar Fubara. It looks like there's no end in sight. But let's see how things play out. But I must thank you, Douglas Agbankwa, constitutional lawyer and policy analyst. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with other parts of the conversation on the program. Stay with us.
Welcome back, and so it's the Friday edition of the program, and it's been a while since we explored the benefits of health and wellness and fitness. So fitness is the key word on this segment, and I miss the days when we jumped around this set. But we'll just spend some time on this conversation. And joining us to help us with this is Mr. Bobby Uranta. Mr. Bobby Uranta is a nutrition and fitness coach who joins us on this segment. Welcome. He's right here in our Lagos studio.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good.
Now, as I reflected on this segment, I couldn't take my mind off of the front page of The Guardian this morning, where, Guardian is helping us understand how easy access to drugs, is costing us some of our, fitness. And I can recall the image of, the man or the woman, the individual, as the case may be, who is running away from, addiction, but is bound by, drugs. Yes, that's the image there, right there. So my question is, as we start off, what are we missing in terms of wellness when we resort to drugs, the use of drugs, but we are, not doing enough in our lifestyle, in the fitness part of our lifestyle?
When we speak about fitness, it's not just the physical fitness. Mental fitness is a big part of it. So usually when people run to things like vices like drugs, that's because there's a vacuum. There's a vacuum when it comes to their mental health. And this is a subject that I think is affecting so many Nigerians today. So it's not really about how we can improve on physical fitness. I would say more so it's about approaching fitness wholesomely, understanding that fitness has different facets.
So walk us through those facets.
So when we look at physical fitness, obviously that's our health, that's our cardiovascular health, that's our strength. In fact, as a matter of fact, there's a recent study that says people are more likely to have chronic health issues if their cardiovascular health, which is their heart, and their physical strength is not firing up, it's not performing, as against diabetes and other chronic health issues. And then when it comes to mental health, I would say it comes from a place of, number one, trauma, especially based on one's environmental upbringing. It comes from a place of, if you look at the state of things in the country today, the average Nigerian is battling so many battles, right? So these are the issues that create this vacuum when it comes to mental wellness, So it's important for us to understand that when we want to tackle such issues, just like I mentioned, we have to be very methodical about it, right? And creating an avenue where people can come out and speak, I think that just have that discourse, I think, is one way to start the process when it comes to mental wellness. And then when it comes to physical fitness, I would say trying to sensitize people about the need to be more active, move around, right? Trying to make them understand that even though, the nature of your job might require you to sit down for hours, just being conscious about it, means every now and then you move around. It could also mean first thing in the morning before you jet out, you go for a 20-minute walk, because steps is one very underrated way to fast track your fitness.
And you've, led me right to the next destination of the conversation, which is, balancing your regular 9 to 5 with commitment to fitness. For a lot of people who have to rise at 5 and then they're returning to work again at 5, and not forgetting that they do this perhaps Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday, and then there's no time for fitness. What's the subscription that you offer as a fitness coach that can accommodate some form of activity, even if it's 20 minutes a day, into that particular routine?
The first and most important step is the mindset. I work with very busy individuals in and outside of the country. A majority of the time when people say they don't have the time, they actually do. They just don't realize it. So one approach is that I like to do is, first of all, we take a review of what they typically do on a day-to-day. Yes, a typical 9 to 5, maybe a desk job, but then you realize that within the hours of the day, we have so much time that you could just, dash out, dash in, do a 15-minute circuit. It could also be the moment you get back from work, right? And then let's not also forget the weekends. If your fitness is a priority for you, you're going to create time. That could mean 30 minutes on Saturday morning. That could mean an hour on a Sunday evening, right? So I think the moment we fix the mindset of not having time and actually audit your lifestyle, audit your day-to-day, you discover you actually have so much time, an ample amount of time, in fact.
Well, I'm trying to picture the time in my mind's eye because I'm guilty. But you know what? We look forward to another opportunity where you actually demonstrate this for us on the program. And that's a promise. We're going to have you back. But we must anchor the conversation at this point because we have another stop. We've been talking with Mr. Bobby Uranta, who is a nutrition and fitness expert who has joined us on this segment. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, there's more for you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. So let's talk to the people from Westerfield College. They are organizing a summer camp program, and they are right here with us in our Lagos studio. We have joining us Kara Adu, Regional Marketing Manager, Africa, Westerfield College, UK. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And Melissa Wezioska, right?
Yes.
I tried. Head of Operations, Westerfield College, UK. Thank you so much for coming. So I like to begin from the very start. The school and what is it all about? Let's begin from there before we talk about the summer camp.
Okay, so Westerfield College actually started in Nigeria, in Lagos actually, started in Yiaga. So the first college we ever had was in Yaba, and then of course we grew and then moved to a 5 times bigger size in Victoria Island, Lagos. And we were established in 2011, so we're about, say, 13, 14 plus years. And, it's been a fantastic year, to be honest, or period of time that we've existed. And then last year we launched Westerfield UK. We are looking to open officially September 2026, of course. Westerfield College, as you asked, is a 6th form college. We offer, programs like A-levels, university foundation program. And of course, in the UK, we offer summer camp as well, for age 9 to 17. And of course, academic programs for students who are looking to study abroad.
So let's talk about what makes this particular summer camp. I'm sure you've been doing summer camps. What is making this one a bit different?
So usually your summer camps only do one strain or one specific track, whereas in contrast we have several. So we have sports, academics, networking and leadership, immersive English and traditional tours as well. So that's where we differ. We offer a wider variety to students and a better chance for them to develop academically and socially and as a person.
So how do you think this will benefit the students themselves, intending students and all of that, personally and academically?
Yeah.
Because those are the two-pronged areas I'm sure you're trying to target target then?
Yes, absolutely. So from an academics point of view, we have 5 academic tracks. So we have STEM, pre-med, business and law, computers and coding, and immersive English as well. So we have various academic tracks for students to try, immerse themselves in, develop. And then from a personal point of view, it's an opportunity for them to grow their independence, it's maybe their first time abroad. So they're doing multiple things, experiencing several things in a 2-week period. So it's a very fun experience, immersive, and it's a great opportunity for all students.
So this is for pre-tertiary students, not necessarily a full-fledged secondary academic institution, if you catch my drift. It's not necessarily for senior secondary school students, as we say here in Nigeria, but for it's a pre-university intervention academic institution, right?
Absolutely, yes. That's actually a very nice way to put it. So,
I just wanted our viewers to get a sense of
what
type of intervention.
Yeah, I mean, so people would typically call it a post-secondary type of institution, but she put it very nicely. Like, maybe I'll steal yours.
And it is based on a UK curricula, of course, when you get the name of the institution.
Yes. So in the UK, slight difference. Academically, we do offer same programs here in Nigeria because we have 3 campuses here, right? We have in Lagos, we have in Abuja, and then we have in Kano. And we offer same academic programs across. The slight difference is in the UK, we offer summer camp program. So that is open to kids that are aged 9 to 17. Okay. So it really doesn't, it's not like an academic program, so you don't have to have all A's or something like that to enroll, yes.
All right, so for the UK experience, is this suitable for first-time international travelers?
Great question, actually. Yes, it is. And the reason is because we're going to be giving them visa support. We're going to be helping them with their visa processing. And it's fantastic that you asked that question because so we have an upcoming international education fair where they can learn more, and we have the British High Commission attending to talk about visa and all of that. So just to further enlighten them and prep them ahead of time.
So let's look at, I know, because someone will wonder, say you started in, I think, Yiaga, then went to Victoria Island, now the UK. Is it a business reason, an expansion reason? What exactly is the reason behind this?
I would say all of the above, but then in the heart of it, I would say the major reason is really us just, every day we keep thinking about how to improve education, how to build a total prepared child, how to impact the child to then further impact the world. And what better way to do that than to go global, internationally, to be honest, And, it's interesting because we happen to be the first African school, in the UK. So it's such a big deal. It helps,
I like the sound of that, the first African school in the UK.
I mean, not to brag or anything, but yes. It's just to further give, our people the opportunity to. When I was in secondary school, I think university, it was still a bit, difficult. It was a big deal when you study abroad, but then, we have a lot of our people wanting to study abroad these days, and not just study abroad. We do offer programs where if you want to study in Nigeria as well, absolutely you can.
So Melissa, what do you think this is designed for, this UK campus, for instance? Because that's quite an important question for those people who are like, okay, I'm hearing this for the first time. Let me be clear on what I'm up for.
Yes, of course. So our campus is actually designed for everybody. There's an element to cater for every student. There's so much on offer. Everybody will find something from sports, academics, and whether you're quite advanced at sport, you'll find it there. Whether you're a beginner, you want to try, you'll find it there as well. So it's a fantastic opportunity to come, try sports, try academics, and it's something that will impact your future because it gives you a chance to try it, experience it, see if you like it, and then helps you make a decision in the future if it is something you want to pursue.
Now, there's a very healthy African population in the United Kingdom, especially a Nigerian population in the United Kingdom. So for those who are watching from across the world now and are asking, how significantly different is the British Sixth Form from Westerfield, UK? Please respond to them. Melissa, that's for you.
Okay, so I think within the UK and here, I think our college caters to everybody. Like I said before, even with the summer and the sixth form itself, we have a wide range of programs, A-levels, foundation programs, and with that variety, there's a catering to every student and an opportunity for every student to excel. And I think we have a vision where we impact the child, we impact the world. So our team goes above and beyond, and we are there to support and cater for anybody who wants to excel.
Well, maybe I should bring that to you. What's the equivalent of the British sixth form in Nigerian secondary education? Maybe that will help us get a sense of it.
Equivalent would be the Cambridge A-level.
Okay.
Or maybe year 12 would be the equivalent.
Year 12 would be the last year in secondary school,
yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Westerfield UK offers that as well.
So we offer, so the academic programs that we offer, right? So typically, if you want to study abroad, you probably want to have do like a Cambridge A-levels, which is for 2 years. That's the, is accepted in all countries, so you can always do that. If you want to streamline it to certain countries, then you can do the foundation program, right? So you can do either to study abroad. And then the other programs, like the ones we're familiar with, in Nigeria, like JUPEB and things like that, for if you want to go to a Nigerian school. So basically, it's for first students who are done with secondary school and they're thinking, where next, pretty much.
Let's bring in Melissa, International Education Fair, which is the crux of the matter. Talk to us about it within the time we have.
Yep, so absolutely. It's an event where we've brought in the universities, we've brought in representatives of the international universities, and it's an opportunity for parents and students to come meet these representatives firsthand, get any information they would like, but also meet them in person. Any questions can be addressed there. There's also good opportunities to submit applications on the spot. And as my colleague said, we have the honor of having the High Commissioner there to aid us with visa applications, and it's a fantastic opportunity.
Well, it looks
that's
like
very reassuring. Visa application. That's a headache.
Yeah,
it is.
It is.
Yeah,
because
it is.
We needed, you wanted to add to what she said.
Yes. So it's an opportunity, right? Because we've talked about summer camp. We've talked about studying abroad, right? So you're thinking, oh, I want my child to study abroad. I don't know how to go about it. I have the funds. I don't know what school. I don't know what course. It's the perfect place to be at to get all of these questions answered and more. And of course, you also enjoy maybe certain discounts and scholarships on the sport. So really, it's a win-win situation, if you ask.
Is it part of what I saw at the School Leaders and Teachers Conference? Is it incorporated? Is it in this International Education Fair?
Incorporated, no, but side by side, yes.
But there's an important question. If we have this conversation, we don't have this question, then we didn't do well.
Tell me.
The issue of cost, very important. The naira and the pounds, they're not mates. They're not smiling. So the issue of cost is quite important.
Yeah.
How fast can these processes be? When can people start applying? Where is this fair taking place? So just give us some action bullet for response. Okay,
so for the International Education Fair, we are having that happen in 5 locations this year, 2 in Lagos. So 1 is actually happening tomorrow on the 24th.
Where?
In Sheraton Hotel.
Which is Sheraton Ikeja?
Yes, on the mainland, yes. Yeah. The second one is happening on the 25th at the Lagos campus, Westerfield College, Victoria Island. The third is happening in Abuja on the 27th.
Be sure of the date.
On the 27th, Transcorp Hilton. The fourth is happening on the 29th in Port Harcourt. Presidential Hotel.
That's along the Bar Road.
Yes. And then the 5th one is happening in Enugu at Golden Royal. Yes.
That's the Leadership School Leaders and Teachers Conference, right?
So that's the International Education Fair where people can come and ask more questions about summer camp, studying abroad. We do have a sister company called MOD Education as well. They do study abroad. So it's just, again, using one stone to kill about what?
500
5 birds.
Thank you.
Or 10, 15, as many as possible.
Bukola, she has not answered the question. Maybe Melissa will give us the pound, naira.
That's what I wanted to double down on.
Yes.
I know you may not want to tell us exactly, the figure in pounds or naira, but give us a sense of how affordable it is.
Well, that's summer camp.
Yes. Or even, just studying in Westerfield, Nigeria or UK.
Okay, I can tell you, actually. So for the academic programs offered in Westerfield, UK, we're currently open to British citizens only. We're looking to start taking international students by 2028. But I'll just tell you regardless at the moment. So for A levels, it's about £32,000. For University Foundation, it's about 30, and then for pre-med, it's about that score. Students who are looking to study medicine. It's about £33,000. But we also have scholarships for all students, actually, and it's based on merit. The amounts that you are entitled to is highly dependent on your grades and all of that, and we do have a very thorough process.
Melissa, I'm sure you have one last thing to say.
Sorry.
You want to give us discounts?
Absolutely.
Of course. I think my last bit is that it's a fantastic opportunity for any student, and it's something that is worth investing in. We take our responsibilities as educators very seriously, and we would be honoured to have any student come join us for the summer.
So for Lagos, it's tomorrow at Sheraton Hotel.
Absolutely. Please come join us.
International
what time?
Education Fair.
It starts for 10.
International Education Fair.
Yes.
Fantastic. So when they come there, give them the rest.
Yeah.
Melissa Wazioka is the head of Operation Westerfield College, the UK, and Kara Adu, Regional Marketing Manager, Africa, Westerfield College, UK. Thank you both for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Can I just add, if it's okay, like a contact?
10 seconds, yes, you can. Yes,
please. To reach us for summer camp, please call us on 080-7295-1229, and then you can send an email as well at summercamp@westerfieldcollege.uk. We'll be happy to take your calls and emails.
Fantastic, and that's it on that Westerfield notes. We appreciate you for your time throughout the week. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeffrey Ozama.
Do some exercise. We'll be back again on Monday. Thank you for being there. I am Bukola Koka.